Welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be tackling a figure who I think kind of sits between history and legend,
Okay.
El Conde de Saint-Germain.
Oh, wow.
And I,
Okay.
I think our listeners are probably curious about this guy because he's described as being everything from a courtier and alchemist to a musician and an inventor.
Right.
What is it about this guy?
Yeah. Well, I think what's captivating immediately is just the breadth of his supposed talents and the mystery that surrounds his origins. Born sometime around the late 17th or early 18th century, even his birth date is uncertain.
Yeah, it's like grasping at smoke.
Right.
We're looking at a Spanish Wikipedia article today to try and separate fact from fiction about this guy.
Okay.
And even the article kicks it off with an air of mystery,
Hmm.
highlighting his recurring presence in stories about the occult.
That's a really interesting point. Right off the bat, we're dealing with a figure who exists in this liminal space between documented history and esoteric traditions, which makes you wonder, was he intentionally cultivating that mystique, or has it been a result of centuries of embellishment?
Right. I'm leaning toward a little of A.
Yeah,
A little of column A, a little of column B.
probably so.
But, before we get too deep into speculation, let's lay some groundwork.
Okay.
The article does give us one concrete date. Saint-Germain died on February 27, 1784, in Eckernförde, Germany.
At least we have one fixed point in this sea of unknowns, right?
Right.
And it's interesting to contrast that with the lingering questions about his birth. Some even claim he was the son of Francis II Rákóczi, Prince of Transylvania,
Okay.
which, would add a layer of intrigue.
Yeah, imagine the family reunions for that family.
Right.
But, okay, so let's talk about this guy's supposed mastery of, well, everything.
Okay.
The article mentions fluency in multiple languages, expertise in art, science, music. I mean, it's almost too much for one person.
It does sort of beg the question, was he truly a master of all these disciplines, or was he a very, very brilliant illusionist?
Right.
Think about it. To create this aura of expertise across so many fields would have been a feat in itself. It would have required a keen understanding of human psychology and a knack for performance.
Yeah, he'd be a hit on today's social media, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But speaking of illusions, we can't ignore the elephant, or rather, the potentially immortal being in the room. The stories about Saint-Germain's extraordinary longevity,
Yes.
even immortality.
It's really where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Some accounts place him at events centuries before his supposed birth. I mean, talk about time-mending abilities.
Right.
And many who met him commented on his perpetually youthful appearance.
So is he a master of disguise? Was he blessed with amazing genes, or did he stumble upon the fountain of youth? I mean, what do you make of these immortality claims?
Well, it's worth noting that tales of immortality are a recurring theme across cultures and time periods.
Right.
It speaks to this very deep-seated human desire to transcend our mortal limitations. But what makes Saint-Germain's story stand out is the way that it intertwines with documented historical events.
Yes.
He wasn't just some mythical figure in a far-off land.
Yeah.
He was rubbing elbows with royalty,
Right.
allegedly involved in political intrigues popping up in major European cities.
Right. So let's start with Vienna in the 1740s.
Okay.
He captivates audiences there. He allegedly heals the French Marshal Belle Isle, and there's even a connection to diamonds.
Yeah, that Vienna period is like a microcosm of his whole life. It's this blend of documented social interaction and then these whispers of these extraordinary abilities.
Yes.
It's as if he wanted to leave people guessing.
Yeah, he was a master of the ambiguous Instagram post centuries before Instagram existed.
Exactly.
And then we have London in 1745,
Okay.
and here he is arrested, suspected of Jacobite sympathies.
So, this is where understanding the historical context is crucial.
Yeah.
The Jacobite Rising was a serious threat to the British crown, and Saint-Germain's arrest suggests that he was moving in circles where those political allegiances really mattered.
Right. So maybe he wasn't just a charming socialite. He was navigating some dangerous political waters.
Potentially so.
And then, of course, there's Paris. He becomes a close confidant of Louis XV and Madame de Pompadour, fueling all sorts of courtly gossip.
The epicenter of power and intrigue to be a trusted figure in that court suggests that he was either incredibly skillful at navigating those social dynamics, or that he possessed information or abilities that were deemed valuable by those in power.
Or maybe a little both.
Likely.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
Right.
But his time in Paris wasn't all champagne and courtly favors. In 1760, Louis XV sends him on a diplomatic mission to The Hague,
Okay.
which ends in accusations of conspiracy and a hasty escape.
That episode is particularly intriguing because it hints at this possible darker side to his activities. Was he truly involved in some sort of plot, or was he framed?
Right.
It raises questions about who his enemies might have been and what they had to gain by discrediting him.
Okay, so we have a mysterious figure with a possible connection to Transylvanian royalty, a knack for languages and music whispers of immortality, and a habit of finding himself at the center of political dramas. I mean, this is like a real-life historical thriller.
Yeah.
And to add another layer of intrigue, the article lists a whole bunch of aliases used by Saint-Germain.
Oh, wow.
Marquis de Montferrat, Conde de Belmar, General Welded. I mean, the list goes on.
So what's so fascinating about this is that this use of aliases could point to a deliberate effort to obscure his true identity and movements. It makes you wonder what he was trying to protect himself from.
Yeah.
Was it simply a matter of personal safety, or was he involved in activities that required a high degree of secrecy?
Right. Maybe he was an early spy slipping in and out of countries under different guises.
Right.
Or perhaps he was trying to escape a past he didn't want to be connected to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the possibilities are endless.
They are.
But with so many names, how do we even know we're dealing with the same person?
Right. Well, that's the challenge with a figure like Saint-Germain. This lack of concrete evidence
Right.
of firsthand accounts in his own voice just adds to the mystery. It's like trying to assemble a puzzle with half of the pieces missing.
Which makes you wonder, did he intentionally create this aura of mystery? Or is it something that's been built up around him over time?
That's a question that we'll continue to grapple with as we delve deeper into the life and legend of El Conde de Saint-Germain. What we choose to believe says as much about us as it does about the man himself.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. It really is remarkable how someone like Saint-Germain, who lived, centuries ago, can still spark such intense curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it is about his story that continues to capture our imaginations?
I think it's that tantalizing blend of historical fact and then just these outlandish claims.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have these documented accounts of him interacting with royalty and diplomats,
Right.
and yet we also have these persistent whispers of alchemy, immortality, occult knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean,
And those whispers haven't faded with time.
no.
In fact, they seem to have grown louder in some circles.
Right.
The article even mentions his influence on groups like the Illuminati and his presence in modern esoteric teachings.
It's like he's become this kind of larger-than-life symbol of hidden knowledge and secret societies.
Yeah.
But how much of that is based on actual evidence versus later interpretations? You know what I mean?
That's where things get tricky. Separating the Saint-Germain of history from the Saint-Germain of myth and legend, it's a real challenge.
Yeah.
It's a bit like an archaeological dig.
Right.
Sifting through these layers of accumulated narratives to try to find the original foundation.
And what makes it even more challenging, I think, is that Saint-Germain left behind very few personal writings.
Right.
The only work that's attributed to him, La Moisson de Trino Sophia,
Yeah.
is largely obscure and open to multiple interpretations.
That lack of a definitive voice just adds to the enigma, doesn't it?
Right.
It's almost as if he intentionally left this void for others to fill with their own, interpretations, projections, beliefs.
It makes you wonder, what would Saint-Germain himself think about his legacy?
Right.
Would he be amused by these elaborate stories?
Yeah.
Or frustrated by the distortion of his true self?
It's such a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it also highlights a crucial point. History is rarely this neat and tidy narrative,
Right.
It's a complex tapestry woven from facts and memories and interpretations and, yes, even myths.
So how do we as curious mind approach a figure like Saint-Germain?
Mm-hmm.
How do we navigate this maze of fact and fiction without getting completely lost?
Well, I think it requires a balance of open-mindedness and critical thinking,
Right.
We can't simply dismiss everything as fabrication,
Right.
but we also can't accept every claim at face value.
Right.
It's about asking questions, considering different perspectives, and acknowledging that there might not be one definitive answer.
It's almost like being a detective, following a trail of clues, but knowing that some will inevitably lead to dead ends.
Exactly. And part of the fun is piecing together that puzzle, even if we never fully solve it.
Right.
But let's shift gears for a moment and delve into some of the specific locations and events associated with Saint-Germain.
Okay.
The article mentions a particularly intriguing passage about his time in Vienna,
Okay.
where he seemed to live very lavishly,
Yeah.
surrounded by beautiful women, an aura of opulence.
It sounds like he knew how to make an entrance.
He did.
But Vienna in the 18th century was also a hub of political intrigue, a playground for spies and diplomats.
Yeah.
Was Saint-Germain simply enjoying the high life, or was he involved in something more clandestine?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The article suggests that he might have used his charm and his social connections to gain access to valuable information, making himself an asset to those in power.
It's like something out of a spy novel.
It is.
Was he playing both sides, gathering intel for various factions?
The possibility is certainly there. And remember, this was a time when information was a precious commodity.
Right.
You know, who you trust, who you align yourself with, could make or break your fortunes. It could even cost you your life.
So those seemingly frivolous social gatherings might have actually been these high-stakes games of power and deception.
Potentially.
But Saint-Germain's story isn't all glitz and glamour. The article also mentions his exile from France after accusations of conspiracy and treachery, what led to his downfall.
That's a crucial turning point in his narrative, isn't it? Did he overplay his hand?
Right.
Did he make enemies in high places, or was he a victim of circumstances beyond his control?
It makes you wonder if he had any sense of his own mortality, even amidst all of these stories of immortality.
Right.
Perhaps even he couldn't escape the consequences of his actions or the machinations of those who sought to bring him down.
It's a reminder that even the most cunning individuals can be brought low by forces larger than themselves. But even in his downfall, Saint-Germain managed to maintain this air of mystery. The article says very little about what became of him after his exile.
Right.
Did he disappear entirely? Or did he simply resurface under another persona?
Right. Maybe he went underground, continuing his activities in the shadows.
Right.
Or maybe he finally found that quiet corner of the world where he could live out his days in peace.
The possibilities are endless, and that's part of what makes Saint-Germain's story so enduring.
Yeah.
It invites us to fill in those blanks, to imagine what might have been.
It's like he left us with a choose-your-own-adventure ending to his life story.
It is.
But before we get too carried away with speculation,
Sure.
let's ground ourselves in some of the more specific claims and legends associated with Saint-Germain.
Okay.
The article touches on his alleged alchemical experiments.
Yes.
His ability to transform lead into gold,
Right.
and his possession of these elixirs of youth.
Yes, the classic tropes of the alchemist and the eternal youth. These are elements that appear time and again in stories about those who claim to possess hidden knowledge or supernatural abilities.
So how do we separate the historical Saint-Germain from the mythical one? Did he actually dabble in alchemy?
Yeah.
Or were these stories simply embellishments that were added later?
Well, it's essential to remember that alchemy wasn't viewed as mere superstition in Saint-Germain's time.
Right.
You know, it was a respected field of study that blended elements of science and philosophy and spirituality. The pursuit of transforming base metals into gold was often seen as a metaphor for personal transformation
Okay.
and the quest for spiritual enlightenment.
So even if we don't take those stories about transmuting lead into gold literally,
Yeah,
they can still hold a kind of symbolic meaning.
exactly. And it's worth noting that many prominent figures in history, including Isaac Newton,
Right.
had a deep interest in alchemy.
Yeah.
It was a way of trying to understand the fundamental nature of matter and the universe.
So Saint-Germain's interest in alchemy, whether real or fabricated, could reflect a broader intellectual curiosity
Yeah.
and a desire to push the boundaries of knowledge. It adds another layer of complexity to his already enigmatic persona. So we've been unpacking this enigma that is the Count of Saint-Germain
Right.
and exploring, his alleged mastery of everything from diplomacy to alchemy.
Right.
But some of the most persistent stories involve, his youthful appearance and the rumors of these elixirs that could cheat time. What is the truth behind these tales of eternal youth?
Well, the source doesn't offer any, concrete proof of age-defying potions.
Right.
But it is fascinating to explore why those stories took hold.
Yeah.
Remember, we're talking about a time when the average lifespan was significantly shorter
Right.
than it is today.
A quarter.
So the idea of prolonging youth and vitality would have held immense appeal.
It's almost like a primal human desire, isn't it, to push back against the inevitable march of time. And Saint-Germain, with his consistently youthful appearance, despite, decades of supposed travel and intrigue,
Yeah.
becomes a symbol of that yearning for longevity.
Precisely. And those whispers of elixirs and secret formulas,
Oh,
they
yeah.
tap into this long tradition of folklore and mythology surrounding the Fountain of Youth, the Philosopher's Stone, the
Right.
quest for immortality. It speaks to our fascination with transcending our physical limitations.
So even if those elixirs were more myth than reality, The fact that those stories circulated so widely tells us something about the anxieties and aspirations of the time.
Exactly.
People were looking for answers,
Yeah.
for ways to cheat death. And Saint-Germain, with his air of mystery and his rumored knowledge of these hidden arts,
Yeah.
became a focal point for those desires.
It's a reminder that history is not just a collection of facts and dates.
Right.
It's also a reflection of human hopes and fears.
Right.
And the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world around us.
Absolutely. But as we wrap up our deep dive, I keep coming back to that central question. Who was the real Count de Saint-Germain?
Mm-hmm.
Was he a master manipulator who expertly crafted his own legend?
Yeah.
Or was he a genuinely extraordinary individual who possessed knowledge and abilities far beyond his time?
I think the beauty of his story is that it allows for both possibilities.
Yeah.
And perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between.
Yeah.
You know, a blend of historical fact, shrewd self-promotion,
Right.
and the inevitable embellishment that comes with time and retelling.
It's a puzzle with no easy solutions,
Right.
which is probably why he continues to fascinate us centuries later.
Absolutely.
So for those of you listening out there, what do you make of the Count de Saint-Germain?
Yeah, what aspects of his story resonate most with you?
Yeah, and as you delve further into, the mystery surrounding this very enigmatic figure, remember that history is often a dialogue between the past and the present.
That's a good point.
The questions we ask and the interpretations we embrace reveal as much about ourselves as they do about the subject of our inquiry.
What a fantastic thought to leave our listeners with.
Yes, the mystery of Saint-Germain continues.
That does.
And the journey of exploration is just as fascinating as any definitive answer that we might find.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.